Welcome to the meeting of Rutland Town School. We'd like to start with...
Okay, good.
Can we please stand to start the meeting of the Rutland Town School Board meeting and the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Sorry, poor Tina, we're all standing.
So I'd like to call for any additions, deletions, or changes to the agenda. Does anyone have anything besides myself? So I would just like to add under upcoming meetings and future agenda items that we discuss, we've had a request for a formal hearing. And so I'll put that under that headline.
Also,
We have to discuss a time to do it.
have you got any others?
Not at this time, I guess. I do want to move the contract recommendations under executive session as well to have a little bit more discussion on personnel.
I'll make a motion to accept the agenda with the amendments.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, Lynette.
Welcome.
All right. Teacher, staff, and community comments. Anyone on the call or here, as we don't have anyone here in the room? Welcome, Abby. We're just offering any time for comments. If you had any, now's the time.
Great, sorry for being late.
Oh, no problem. Just wanted to give you a little time to say something if you had something on your mind.
Thanks, I just wanted to listen.
Okay, perfect. Thanks. Welcome. All right, seeing none, let's move on to old business. We heard a little bit about the second floor fire safety in the principal's report. Eric, did you want to discuss that a little bit?
I've really got not much to add. I've been out for the last few days. They did have a person come today to look at the upstairs fire safety. They said we need 8 detectors, 2 strobes, and 1 voice, and they're gonna get us a quote. And that's all I've heard.
Thank you. So we'll wait for a quote.
Eric, who'd you have come out?
You know, I walked in as Kelly and I were walking the hallway. He just mentioned it to me, so I do not know. I'm
told
looking.
it was going to be Chris Clark.
Well, Chris is the fire chief, but he
Coun-
wouldn't have
Countryside.
He
been
wouldn't
the
have
one.
to do that? Oh, he said countryside.
Countryside?
I believe
Okay,
countryside.
fine.
Yes.
Yep. Okay, perfect, thank you.
Since we have no new business, we'll move on to finance.
Okay, so there's a few things on the list here tonight. Start with the smaller things first. We'll jump around a little bit. So elevator update, there was an update in the packet. So I was asked at the last meeting to provide an update. So currently the timeline is that we are working on building specs at this time. Because of the timeline as to when the taxpayers approved the elevator project, there wasn't enough time to build specs, go out to bond, go out to bid, and still have that project done this summer that we're currently in. It only gave us about 2 months, and a lot of contractors would have work to this size built months in advance. So we decided to push it to next summer, because this is definitely a project that needs to happen during the summer due to the location of the work. By pushing it to next summer, it gives us ample time to build the specs, which we are currently working on this summer. It's one of my priorities after I finish closing the year, which I just finished about 15 minutes ago for all of the districts. After the specs are built, we will go out to bid. That's planned for this early fall. And then once we have, we'll probably give about 30 to 60 days timeline for contractors to come in, do a walkthrough, look at the project, and then we'll look at bringing that to the board probably early winter, and go out to bond in the winter pool, which will be sometime around the first of the year, and award a bid sometime, I would imagine around that same time, January, February, and then look to start the project as soon as school is out next spring.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
All right, so I guess next, let's go to the year-end report. I believe that came to you via email today or maybe yesterday. So the year is closed. We did end the year with a surplus of $379,000. And I have listed some of the significant variances that have caused that surplus. So we had an assessment refund from the SU in the amount of $23,000. That was from the prior year. That was from last year. That was refunded this year. And that was for the general fund surplus from last year. There was $202,000 in tuition savings, and that ranges from pre-K all the way to secondary and vocational. We had an increased surplus due to a $57,000 special ed assessment refund. So we did, the GRCSU ended this year that we just closed with a special ed surplus of $233,000, and that was refunded already. So that $57,000 of that was Rutland Town's portion. Special ed disallows were above budget by $35,000, so that offset part of that special ed surplus. We had $48,000 in professional services savings, which was mostly Kelly Services. Many of our schools found a problem filling Kelly Services slots just due to less people working due to the pandemic. And that's going on. It's been going on for the last few years. $36,000 in supplies and dues savings, and $21,000 in salaries and benefit savings due to leaves, unfilled positions, benefit changes. I've listed some of the other fund balances that you currently have at year end. You have a capital improvement fund of $39,717, a scholarship fund of $1,400, an HRA reserve fund of $6,000, and a pre-K grant of $7,916. One thing you did pay for this year out of their capital improvement fund was to repair the solar, which I believe was approximately $56,000. One thing you can decide, but you would need to decide it tonight, is if you rather take that out of the general fund and put that money back into the reserve fund, we can make that transfer tomorrow.
We could, okay, good.
But you would have to decide that tonight because we need to, our state report is due next week.
Good.
Should we discuss that now? And then just to clarify, that fun field trip that was on the August one, which we didn't discuss yet, you said that you're gonna put that back on here, right?
So that's not reflected in here, though.
Right, so it's more like 378 or something like that for the.
Correct, yeah.
Okay.
I'd like to see us take the money that we had used to fix the solar, take that out of our general fund and put the money back into our capital improvement fund. Right now, the only way we can add to the capital improvement fund is to ask the voters to allow us. I would like to build that back up, and seeing how we have a surplus, use that. That would be my motion.
Any discussion? Jeff? Tim, did you have anything to add?
No, I'm good with that.
And I would agree with that too, so, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes.
Okay. So I'll make that adjustment along with there was a transportation adjustment that was prior year for $1,300. And I will send out a new report to the board. I'll have it emailed to you after those adjustments are made. Okay. Any other questions on year end before we move on to the next topic? Okay. let's see, we have, you want to do pupil weighting next? We have not gotten an updated report yet from the state. As of the last report that we received, Rutland Town was going to see a pretty significant negative impact from the pupil weighting. There was some adjustments to the bill in the legislative session that may change that slightly, but they have not provided an updated report to any districts yet as to what those adjustments to the legislation would have. I don't anticipate them having any significant impact overall. I think they were just minor tweaks to the bill. So that last study that we got from the state had Rutland Town with an impact of almost 10% in pupil weighting. So you would see an equalized pupil decrease based on that weighting.
As I know we briefly touched upon it when Josh Taranzini was here, but have you heard any rumblings? Because we know usually the weighting has to do with low or income or needy. And being we're in the third year now of pandemic, we've paid for all the lunches. So therefore, I feel that you cannot trust the free and reduced lunch like they used to use as the percentage, because if it's free, why should I even fill out the paperwork? So, I mean, there may be some people or some schools that are able to do that. Rutland Town has always been notorious for nobody wants to do it because they still feel their children are stigmatized by it, which they aren't. But so even though we know and we can show as far as services go how much more we're doing and how many more students that we're taking care of, it doesn't appear, I think, in anything that the state uses in order to fill out the spaces. So I was wondering if you've heard anything about how they might adjust that, how they're going to get around it?
Well, it's a statewide problem, and I'm sure it's probably a national problem. The fact that lunches have been free for all students does result in decrease in applications being submitted. I mean, it is important, and we stressed it with the administrators, and I stressed it with the front office staff in the last few weeks, that, and this is a message that's coming from the state, that we continue to collect those applications, and we let parents know that those applications are important for other factors, that those numbers do play into many other factors in our funding, including state and federal grants. And just because your students are still eating for free shouldn't deter you from completing the application if you think you're eligible, if you think you would qualify to apply. There is a webinar later this week that the state is putting on through Hunger Free Vermont on how to market that and really not push, but really influence parents to still complete those applications. So I'm not sure what'll come out of that, but I am attending that to see if there's any methods that we can use. But Rutland Town wouldn't be the only one that would be suffering from that. So it would be all districts. Whether it affects all districts equally is really an unknown. I think Rutland Town had low free and reduced numbers prior to the pandemic.
Which I understand.
And that continues, and I'm sure we've seen a decrease. The direct certified numbers, which are students that are directly certified through the state, through like the SNAP program or through Squares Vermont, those really wouldn't be reflected. It would only be the applications.
Right, and that's part of our problem. I mean, I realize what it was pre-pandemic, but because of the homeless situation, especially in Rutland Town, it has affected us greatly. And I know we get no paperwork. I know that agencies out there are doing the paperwork for those families. So our numbers are not reflecting that. Our services do, but not, I guess it's antiquated now to try to use that free and reduced lunch, the state to use that, because it's antiquated. No, you really can't verify anything by that anymore.
And even in prior years too, they had the EBT through the state.
Right.
And that was based on free and reduced applications. So even though you were eating for free, if you wanted that EBT, you had to fill out the application. That's no longer the case for next
Right.
year because this legislative passed free meals for everyone through, you have to be through a CEP or Provision 2 program. And through those programs, all students qualify for EBT as well, even if they haven't completed a free and reduced application. So that's going to hurt even more. So that's going to, now parents are going to get that without having to complete an application.
I mean,
So
for
there's not even
years,
that incentive.
even before you came, for years, Rutland Town was maybe at 1%, and we all understood that. But it has been such a drastic change. We were low but we were still high compared to previous years, and now, I mean, just in services alone, you look at the increase. I guess I'm trying to come up with a way to explain this to the citizens, and I know there are other communities who are in the same spot. Unfortunately, they still consider us a gold town, of which we aren't anymore, but the services, the impact that we're having from the homeless population, and even those figures are not being accurately portrayed because of other situations that are going in fighting. That, I mean, I don't know what the answer is, but the state has to come up with a different way. Just to automatically say, well, you've been a gold town, you're always a gold town, you'll be there, whatever, and move on. It is not fair to the children that we have to take care of. And especially now with being unable to hire the special educators, the substitutes we need and everything else, I really worry about our service. I mean, the funds just aren't going to be
I know there was some
there.
discussion about possibly having the legislators to one of our GRCSU meetings in the fall. I mean, I think
Yeah,
that's
so we're looking
probably
at
a good topic.
Inviting them to the October meetings to discuss this. I know, Lynette, the concern you have is one that I think is new to Vermont, but yeah, I know that in New Jersey and Illinois, we're dealing with this where, and there's a lot of messaging that we're going to have to do. I know that Lewis is talking about the webinar that he'll be attending on our behalf. But a lot of it is around the messaging, how we can, communicate to the public the importance of this paperwork and really what it, what it means. It's not just about a lunch for a child, but it's that much more. It does have an impact on, like I said, the services that are provided, the funding that we have,
Right.
Everything, the budget. And so, but that's just something that we have to work on our side as well from an admin perspective is also being a little more vigilant in terms of, collecting this paperwork. And so it's not just if you want to turn it in, that we have to be a little more proactive and reach out to families who might be a little more resistant to turn this in. And that's just across the spectrum, not just targeting
No,
specific.
and-
Right, I'm not saying, no, that.
Right, I don't want to, but for instance, say Rutland Town, we had an entity that have always paid taxes, have always paid into the system. They pay nothing now. Rutland Town gets nothing from that property, from those people. And when I look at the number of needs that are coming out of that, say that one building, and I have no figures, no facts, this is all off the top of my head, and how it is affecting our school. We have so many special educators for the children we know. And then we get an influx of these kids. Well, we don't have the educators to support this. So I am worried about the students. I really don't care where they come from, but you have to take care of the students. And in order to do so, you have to have the money. And then when the state says, no, well, we're going to cut your money, it's like, I know, I'm not the only one. I'll shut up now.
Well, the schools are put in a bit of a conundrum because regardless, I know that the Rutland Town staff and administrators are going to do a great job of educating the kids, but there is a cost to do that as well. And so I think, and you're right about the additional services or resources or support or programs does come at a cost. And so, but these are things which we're working through. And I'm sure that as we continually resolve these issues and provide feedback to the state, they'll try to resolve this and find a bit of a solution because this
I hope
is
so, yeah.
Is a relatively new issue in terms of what Rutland Town's experiencing with particularly around some of the homeless population and what some of the hotels how they've been turned over a little bit, but like I said, I think it's one where regardless on that first day of school, who walks through the door, Eric, Sarah, the staff are going to do an excellent job of making sure those kids have everything they need.
Oh, for sure.
Right, but I think that's one, but from a budgeting perspective, we also take a look at is how do we really, provide the support, the program without put it on the sole weight or sole burden on the taxpayers or
Right.
so that's our biggest issue, so.
The state's not going to be able to use the hot lunch program to decipher funds anymore. They're going to have to figure out a new way of doing it, right?
Well,
Supposedly, but.
yeah, I mean, we're waiting to see. I mean, I think they're, they said it's a relatively new thing. I know that's, like you said, these forms that are being returned, the information that they can make determinations in terms of, what the funding looks like, but I think it's still relatively new, so I think we're still in the first iteration, and I'm sure with each year, things will be changed, will be tweaked, and with new elections come new representatives, new senators, and I'm sure there'll be different ideas, and so we'll see. So,
Well, even the food service program that we're in, which is Provision 2, it's based on a 1-year base period, and so this is our base period. And so all the free and reduced applications that we collect this year will determine how much funding that we get, federal funding, in future
Right.
years. We don't know what the state funding will be in the future years. We know that the legislators approved free meals for this year.
But they're
Future-
pushing for all.
So future years are sort of an unknown at this point, and if they do approve it, we don't know where that funding will come from, whether it'll be state funding, which will then trickle down to local funding, or if it'll be directly local funding. But if we stay in Provision 2, it's important that we collect those applications for this year too, because if it's gonna be a local funded mandate, then how much local funding we'll need to contribute is based on how many free and reduced applications we receive this year. So I don't think the free and reduced numbers are going away, or the importance of those numbers are going away. I think we still need to continue to stress the importance of collecting those applications, how that'll impact taxpayers and students. I mean, it's not going to impact students at this point. It's going to affect directly taxpayers and how much money we're getting from the state.
Now, I noticed enrollment for next year. Now, there is, I think there were maybe 3 or 4 of our students that had come off our books at the end of the year that were in that certain, I don't know, the homeless or whatever, that have left. And now I'm getting reports that they're coming back because the summer's ended, they're coming back in. I'm just wondering, are we keeping up with them? Are they reporting them? Or are they just going to show up on day 1 again?
Maybe a little bit of both. So I talked to Pam this morning. I have the numbers from Sarah. We know of a couple of kiddos who are not coming back, but we're getting other ones coming in. So at this point in time, we're looking at 367,
Yep,
which is an increase.
yep.
As per particular students, there are some I know that are coming back and some I do not know.
I know, yeah. Okay, thank you. Sorry. I'm off my bandwagon. Go
All
ahead.
right, so if we go into budget then. So in the packet was the budget timeline. This is similar to what you've seen in the past. So the major change is that we're moving up the process a little bit, and this was a request from several board members across the issue due to some of the challenges we know we're going to face this year, to move up the process, to give us a little bit more time to do research, engage the boards, engage the administrators, and to see how we can come up with creative solutions that will be best for children without having a huge impact on taxpayers. So we're starting the budget process tonight with reviewing of the timeline. We'll have a short discussion. There's some bullet points that Chris and I are going to go over with you to just to get your thinking process started. Not looking for a lot of information today, but just going over some of the key topics that we would like, that we will need feedback from you. Some tonight, some in future meetings, as we start the process. So we're in August here. September, we're going to just continue light conversations about budget, bring in the administrators into the discussion, see what some of their needs are, but not look at any real numbers at that point. We're looking at presenting the first draft to the board in October. That's a month earlier than normal. Usually we start that process in November. In November, we will look at the second draft, continue discussions, look at some of the impacts of the budget. And then we would be looking to have a final budget presented in December with January as a backup date. I know that we don't typically approve it until the end of January for Rutland Town. I don't know if that timeline's set in stone, but it does create some challenges with preparing the town report, and starting the marketing for the brochures and preparing for town meetings. So if that timeline can be moved up at all, that would be great on our end. I mean, we could still have that meeting in January, but I know in the past you've wanted to wait until that day to do the final approval. And so if that's flexible, I think that's something that we should discuss as we go through this process, because that does create challenges. And then once we have an approved budget, then we shift to marketing and just outreach, letting the community know the impacts of the budget, what's changed, major changes, and really trying to get the support of the community so that we don't have to go at this for a second round.
I appreciate everything you've done, and I think the reason, I don't know, probably all schools are the same way, but that we procrastinate as long as we do is because of the legislature. Because a lot of our figures aren't done now until after the budget's voted on. So I think, we kind of, like, we have a surplus. Okay, should we save it, use it for cash to open because we don't know what we're going to get hit with, or do we try to offset, or those are very, very important questions, so that when we get a wish list, we're afraid to do anything because we don't know what it's actually going to look like.
Yep, and those are very good points, and that's just one of my first bullet points. And I mean, there's a lot of factors that come from the state that affect their tax rate, and there's more of those factors than there are factors that you have control over. So you set a budget, but equalized pupils, the yield, CLA, those all come from the state, and sometimes they come timely. Recently, they have not been as timely. So equalized pupils is due December 15th. We have not gotten a final by December 15th in the last few years. CLA was late last year, and the yield is an unknown sometimes until after we even vote on the budget. So those factors are important in determining the tax rate. However, I think we need to get away from the fact that we should be basing a budget on those factors. I mean, we should be basing our budget based on what the school needs and what's going to be best for the students, and try to manage that with what the taxpayers could afford. And those factors that are outside our control, yes, they'll impact that, but we can explain those to the communities as long as we can defend what we have in the budget. I think that should be the main driving force in what we put into our budget. We really should look at staffing, we should look at our ratios, determine what's best that's needed for our students, and let that really be the force behind how we set our budget, and then let those other be factors sort of a second priority. The board, if the board wants to wait till January, that's fine. We can accommodate that. Just knowing that discuss those.
Well, I'm just not an excuse, but I think a lot of times, I know on myself, it's like, because you're getting different stories from different people up north. So either our budget is going to be 5% like we think it's going to be, or it could be 10% increase, or, well, maybe they'll go ahead and do this and it'll be a decrease. So even, I hate to go in front of the community, and we're not the only ones. Every school board does this. Here's our budget. As best as we can guess, it's a guesstimate because we don't know what they're doing in Montpelier. So when people look at it, well, you're going to have a $7 million budget. And then when the tax bills come out, they find out, oh no, actually it's $6.5 million. So well, we're not going to pay as much, or it's $8. It's so hard. I hate to present anything to anybody. We really don't know. It's the best guess we can make.
So, Lynn, I think what, I agree. I understand exactly what you're saying. I agree with Lewis. I think one of the things that we're trying to do when Lewis and I discussed this shift was really having more discussion based on, building needs. And I know that Rutland Town is unique in the fact that it's a, single school district where, Corey Valley and Wells, looking at multiple schools and, staffing across multiple buildings, while Rutland Town really is just concerned about one facility, one group of staff members and outside of the SU staff. But I think what we really want to have start taking a look at is understanding where we're going. So 5 years from now, where do we want this facility to be? Where do we want the staff to be? And really start kind of asking these tougher questions and really being more strategic with decision making. So I know that Lewis had already kind of alluded to, as I work with Sarah and Eric on just staffing ratios, or just we look at enrollment projections, and we really look at 2 years down the road, 3 years down the road, what our staffing needs really are going to be, so the board has an understanding. Here's really a 5-year staffing plan based upon what we're looking at. So we might see a fluctuation in 1 year because of a large, kindergarten group. We might see we need to add an additional kindergarten teacher. And as that, that group matriculates, through the system, we might see this ebb and flow. That's, we might have like 3, first grade teachers, 3 second grade teachers over the course of time, but we have to be able to budget, with that. And I think there are other factors, like I said, that are beyond our control, but we can begin that work. And then as we get the numbers, we can then kind of, backfill that and really take a look at it. But I think we also have to look at, kind of parceling things out. And this is just from work I've done in other districts, other states, really having like a series of buckets where if, like I say, our numbers come in a little bit high and say, what do we absolutely need? What would be nice to have, and what would be, like you said, that wish list, and really just draw from those buckets and have, it's important for us to understand that, but also be very public with, or very, very open with the public about what potential cuts may be, and understand that, that if we want to continue to go 5%, 6%, the taxpayers will support, that's great, but I know in other districts, we really look at a level fund, or we're looking at the very small, and what that would do to our budget, how we'd manage that, and but that's important to see as well, is like if we would really look to reduce cost and, say go to a 1 to 2% budget increase for next year, well, here's what it looked like. Here's what would have to come off the table with, 80% of our budget really tied up into staffing. But I think that's why we have these discussions now a little bit earlier on, where we can, start being more strategic about this and have some very difficult conversations. So when we get into November, December, we've kind of have this figured out. Now we're just waiting on some numbers, and we have some, plan A, plan B, and plan C in place, so that makes sense.
Louis, if I could ask you, when we say, and you've heard it every year, is let's try to level fund it. What is a level funded budget? Do you take out the 379,000 that we're over?
Well, when we look at level funding, we look at expense is usually what we're talking about. And there's 2 ways of talking. I mean, I know I've seen level fund meaning 2 different things. So it could mean level fund, we bring back everything we had the year prior and not add anything, and we see where the chips fall after that. Whether just based on like for like, and in accounting for inflation in salaries, benefits, and other costs, what does that do to the budget? The other way you can look at level funding is, if your budget's at $8 million now, that's what we want your budget for $8 million next year. And so any increases that you get from bringing everything forward, you need to take out, or you could add in, depending on what the situation is. I think typically in the past, when we've looked at level funding, we for the first round, we've brought everything back so that we have everything we had last year, and see what that does to the budget, and then the board has made decisions from there.
So I just want to add the question I think boards need to start considering is, when we look at a level fund, like Louis just said, we bring everything back, is does everything really need to be brought back?
That's kind of what I'm getting to.
And I think but this also is, there's values-based budgeting where you're budgeting, like we talk about having goals or a vision. Right. And so if this is where we're heading, the budgetary decisions are moving us that direction. And so we really look at, like programs, resources, additional staffing. Is this going to get us to where we need to be? If yes, okay, then, that's great. If no, then we should be putting it off to the side. I think a lot of work needs to be done just around efficiencies and just really looking at in terms of I'll just say we did a literary audit, and across the SU, I think there are multitudes of reading programs going on out there across. And I'm not going to give an exact number because I don't have that, but multitudes, a higher number than we'd like. And so we're taking a look at it as well. That's just an unnecessary expense. The fact that we're just throwing good money after bad, and so we have to look at how do we whittle this down across our SU or across districts to a program that works, that'll work for our students, that our students will benefit from, but without adding additional costs. In the past, it's just been because someone says, hey, we want to add this program. Well, we just kind of add this program, and then we don't really ever vet it and go back and revisit, see if it works. It just kind of stays on the books in perpetuity. And so we want to kind of try to, really go through. And that's part of what this discussion really, is just going to start to think about that is, there are some hard decisions that have to be made. I mean, obviously, staffing is the last thing you should ever touch. And we understand that because we know that the single greatest factor in terms of student achievement really is the quality of the instructor you place in front of our students. But we really have to take a look at a lot of things. I said, so when we look at that level of fund and bringing everything back, the first question really is, okay, we're bringing this back. Do we really need to bring this back? Or is that money we can put on the pile here that we can use for something else? And those are good discussions that I think Lewis, myself, Eric, and Sarah can start taking a look at, bringing it back to the board, and in future meetings are really starting to kind of just go through that. And I think with these discussions being transparent and open, I think our communities will appreciate the fact that we really are looking at being more fiscally responsible. Not to say we haven't been in the past, but we really are making decisions. So when we come in with a certain percent, whatever they may be, we've looked at many different scenarios and we've presented here's what we have for them without compromising the quality of education for our students.
I think that's awesome. Thank you.
So one of the next bullet points is looking at staff wages for next year. We know the job market has been sort of like a runaway train this year with inflation, and we just settled two union agreements this year, both long-term agreements. So teachers was settled for 4 years and ESP for 3 years, and what we settled for may not be what we had budgeted for FY23. So not only are we looking at the additional inflationary costs for the new year, but we also then need to account for anything that we may be short budgeted for FY22 and any other issues that we may have included in the settlement. So those will have an impact that we'll need to look at and see how that impacts our bottom line and how we're going to account for that. We know in the short term for FY23, since we didn't budget for that, we've used some grant funding to try to offset that, but that's only going to be compounded when we look at FY24. So we'll need to take that into account when we look at that first draft. And then one of the other issues that we have not looked at during this year is non-union agreements. So we know we've spent a lot of time looking at both the teachers and the ESP. But we need to remain competitive with our non-union contracts as well to both retain our valuable employees as well as being competitive in the market and to get new valuable employees. And we know it's been a struggle to hire people this year and the last couple of years, both due to a lack of applicants, plus we've seen some issues with our rates and trying to be competitive and get those most valuable employees. So we want to take a closer look at those non-union employees. There's not a lot of them in the districts, but it's important that we look at those classes and look at their rates and the structure that we use to hire those people to make sure that we're remaining competitive in the job market. And so those will have an impact. Food service, we talked a lot about free meals, but so the one thing that we haven't talked about looking towards next year is we are on the 5th year of our vendor contract, and that's the maximum. So we are required to go out to bid for FY24. So it is a very long process to go out to bid for food service. So we will be starting that process early fall. And we don't know exactly where that'll land as far as cost and meals that are being provided. But there's 3 major players in the state. Our current vendor Abbey Group, and Cafe Services. And so they're usually the ones that bid on most bids in the state. We are currently sitting with a pretty nice surplus in our food service account, so that will offset any possible cost increase, but we're hoping for the best, and that'll be a large process that I'll report on at the GRCSU. That's a GRCSU contract, so at the GRCSU meeting we'll talk about that more, and as we go through the process we'll form a committee and an advisory board, and we'll give you updates as we go through that process.
The next item is it really doesn't impact Rutland Town as much as some of the other districts, but around summer programming or ESSER positions. I know that I just had a conversation with Lewis about this today, is we don't want schools, districts, or the SU to become over reliant upon SU funds, and it was meant to kind of get us over the hump, and in terms of recovery around academics, social, emotional, just to try to address some of the deficits or gaps that we were starting to see students, and then as well as build out some capacity. And so what we are asking boards, administrators to really take a look at is, what do things look like when the funds are gone? And so whether it be staffing or programs, and like I said, there are other districts in our SU who have who, if they were to take on, say, summer program, it'd be a pretty exorbitant bill. Rutland Town, not as much, but we do have some funds tied up with summer programs, some staffing as well. But it's just items to consider, because we do know, we've talked at length about this at the SU level. There are ESSER funded positions that will go away when the funds go away, and we're already trying to build out a transition plan, or how we're building out capacity, and we're also asking local districts and schools to do the same with ESSER funds. So there would be that financial cliff that we're going to find ourselves on, that we really kind of be more proactive in planning for that. So if there is a bit of a hit at the end, 2 years' time, we've accounted for it and we have a plan for it. So. And then the next is around facilities planning. I think one of the things that Lewis and I have talked about, we would like to work with Eric, Sarah, and Kelly on really just design a 3 to 5 year facilities plan. I know that there's work that's being done right now on the second floor, and but I think really just understanding. I know Jeff, you shared some concerns prior to starting the meeting. Just really understanding what the building needs are, and really looking at short term and long term, and what impact that'll have on budget, and say year 1, year 5, and if we know we have a big ticket item coming up, obviously it's going to impact how we budget now, and I talked before about capital improvement, and what we do with surplus and things along those lines. So, but it is important for us. And then the PCB testing, that's just kind of, as Lewis said, there are a lot of elephants in the room where we don't really know what's going to occur or happen. We do know that they've stretched out our time in the SU across schools. Now it's over, I think our last school's in July of 2025. But I think part of it is just because they were concerned about funding or what this looks like. So as we do have some of our schools right now going through the first phase, and so we'll have a better idea. I think Polk Elementary and Proctor Elementary, or I'm sorry, Proctor High School are going through this summer and fall, so we'll have a better understanding of what that sampling looks like, and then what sort of recommendations are being made. It could be very similar to the lead testing, where it could be just simply replacing a faucet, or small small fixes, or I think the concern that a lot of superintendents and business managers have is just a large scale where you have to shut down a wing of a school or a school for a short period of time to address an issue and what that does. And I think that's as we look at this and we work with Eric and Sarah, we'll also develop contingency plans if there ever were to be a need where the school to be shut down for any reason. What does that look like for that? So, but I think it's still early on in the program, and so we're just trying to get a better understanding about what the PCB testing and sampling program going to consist of, and what it's going to mean for us financially, and so moving forward.
Do you remember when we're scheduled?
Give me 2 seconds. I brought it up. I just looked at that today. So, 1 second. So Rutland Town is going to be July 1st, 2023 to September 30th, 2023. And in the GRCSU Superintendent's Report, there'll be a breakdown of all the dates as well, but, so we have a year to kind of see how things play out and kind of read the tea leaves a little bit.
So everything we talked about tonight, and plus probably a lot more, will have an impact on the budget and in turn have an impact on the tax rate. So we'd be looking for some feedback as we go back and develop that first draft. We want to make sure that we bring something to you that is going to be in line with what your thoughts are. And so we'd be looking for some feedback tonight and at future meetings on really what you want to see come out of this budget cycle and what kind of increase you maybe are looking at for that you want to see in the first draft, any priorities that you may have that you want to see in the budget, or research that you want us to do and bring back to you when we present that first draft, whether it be staffing, facilities, or any other items that you maybe want to put on, that you want us to put on a wish list or items to consider. So I'll open it up to the board to really ask questions or have a discussion, provide feedback.
I think, personally, I'm sorry, I think tonight, I know you're trying to move it up a month, is a little early, only because I'd like to go through the goal setting first, our goal meeting, and see, that's the first chance we're gonna get as a board to talk and see, which way or what's missing. I myself, it would be premature for me tonight to even guess at what I will be thinking in 2 months.
So we won't be looking at putting together or finalizing the first draft until the beginning of October. So, I mean, if you want to take the time to think about it and discuss it at your board retreat and provide feedback at the next board meeting, that's fine as well.
I just know last year was my first full year of the budget process. And I didn't speak up when I wanted to speak up. I didn't dissect things when I wanted to. I will be doing that more this year. So that now that I know what the process is and how it goes. So, but it is too early to just right tonight to throw anything at you.
I would just ask that, like, as we go through the process, if you do have questions or comments and things that you want to bring up, just bring them up as early as you can in the cycle, so
Right.
that when we're not getting to the last meeting and we're looking at making changes on the fly and having to rush changes through the budget and not having the time to really properly research the impacts that those changes would have. So, I mean, if you know something in September, October, bring it up so that we have the time to really go back, speak with the administrators and see what maybe adding that person or that taking that person away, what impact that would have on the building and students.
I think it's also hard because things have been so different the last few years that when we compare budgets, there's certain line items that look like they haven't been spent, but part of the reason is maybe we don't have anybody in that position right now, or maybe the kids aren't able to go on field trips right now and things like that. So I think even our surplus is higher than it's been the last few years for that reason.
Right.
It's not because we're taxing so much, as that we just haven't been able to spend as much as we want. And I think we have to, be mindful about that when we're going through the budget, that it looks like we have so much money there, but when things are in working order, we don't. And I think part of the goal setting, I would like to discuss some ideas about the budget and some of your first thoughts. So I would love for us to just take a peek at the end of the year report and what the budget is for this upcoming year, and just really kind of deep think it a little bit of what they were saying about where we want to go, and what we have in front of us, and kind of really get some good goals set. And the supervisory union is kind of asking for each local board to bring kind of one of our goals towards the SU, try to tie it in, because we're looking more to try to become one. We're going through the strategic plan together. We're trying to work together more than work apart. And so our goal should be, yes, related to Rutland Town, but also with keeping the SU in mind as well. So,
Tina, I think we hit on something important, like with surpluses and setting a budget. I mean, there's a lot of variables that happen throughout the year. We know that many things, students move in, students move out. I mean, the last few years have not been a good meter as to really measure things. At extracurricular, co-curricular have not occurred as much. We know staffing has been an issue. Tuition, students are more transient, and so tuition has been a harder factor to nail down. But we set a budget based on what we think we're going to need, and our goal is not to spend every line when we set that budget. It's to have that money available so that we can meet the needs of the children once that year starts. So, I mean, to see the savings is great. I think our surplus is at 4% of our total budget, which is some schools set a 5% contingency. I mean, we don't set a contingency, but we make sure that we have enough money to be able to account for if we have to overspend in one area. We have money where we can cut in another area to offset that. Because most of our budget is staffing, I mean, there's not a lot of places that we can maneuver, so it's good to have supply lines or other lines that are a little bit higher than maybe what we need, so that if there's a factor outside our control, we can freeze a line or cut a line mid-year to really offset that deficit.
and I'm thankful that you do that because when a need presents itself, such as the kindergarten para last year, if we had just come off 2 years where we were, no surplus or barely any, we wouldn't have felt as comfortable saying, you know what, we need it, let's do it. It's not easy, but we'll figure it out and hope for the best. Luckily, we got the best scenario where we have a surplus, but, without knowing that Lewis plans for those in his budgets, it makes it harder to make decisions on things that come up that are really tough decisions. So I prefer that we try to keep, some little contingency like that. As we go.
I just want to say that Lewis does not build in a pad in our budget.
Oh, not on purpose.
No, I know,
yeah.
but somebody listening to this may think that, well, I'm just going to add on another 50,000 here, or that doesn't happen.
Yeah.
It's our best guesstimate, but when you get down to the guesstimate, you take the high end, not the low end, type thing. That's all.
Yeah.
You know, there's somebody
clarifying.
out there
Yeah.
that's going to say, oh, they're padding their budget.
Well,
We're not.
we got nailed to that tuition.
Exactly. I mean, you can't tell. And we've been lucky. When we are running a deficit, we all buckle down. The school everybody buckles down to make sure we can cover it. When the marble wall fell off the front of the school, we most certainly didn't plan for that. I mean, stuff happens. So, we just work very hard. I don't know how many years that we had to go through a phase of freezing the budget halfway through the school year, just so that we could cover unexpected expenses. So while $380,000 surplus sounds huge, in comparison to the budget itself, it's nothing. So, that's all.
And if you look at the details of what's behind that surplus, I mean, of the 379, roughly 80% of that is stuff that's outside Rutland Town's control. I mean, tuition, you don't have any control over students moving in and the rates that are being set. And the SU, most of that refund was based on staffing shortages, that positions they weren't able to fill. And so when you look at our total surplus and you take those factors out, you're looking at a very small.
Yeah.
Extremely small percentage, yep.
Yeah, I think it's so high just because things right now are a little sad in our staffing situation and things like that, and COVID.
Yeah, I'd rather have spent that and been
Yeah.
able to hire those people to help our staff than look at the surplus we've got.
For an example, the transportation for athletics, we put that in there in the hopes that students would have rides to games. Now, my daughter played lacrosse. I think she maybe took the bus once the entire season. Half of her games were canceled because of COVID. So yeah, we saved money in the transportation line, but at what cost? I think she had 3 games or something all season.
And like I said, I know staffing is especially the buses having problems. Or I shouldn't say that, betcha is, getting drivers. I gotta tell you, there's one particular resident in Rutland Town that stepped up, went and took all the training he needed, the permits and everything else, so he could be a bus driver. Fortunate for us, only for Rutland Town. So he has stepped in during the day if they're missing, when he can. And he has done night athletics. And we'd really be in a mess if he hadn't stepped up. It's just
They didn't have
awesome.
anybody.
No, they didn't have
Doing
anybody,
field
and what are you
trips
gonna
and
do?
stuff.
But he took time out of his family life, work life, to get the permits, the licenses, and he was tremendous, a tremendous amount of help. I know.
Schools that double up on runs.
Yeah,
Yep.
it is just, so I realize there's a lot more to it, but somebody out there saying, well, you over budgeted $380,000. No, really, we didn't, but I appreciate everything you do.
Good job.
Okay, so I'll wait for feedback at a future meeting. In the meantime, we'll continue pushing along and working on developing the budget.
Next up is a consent agenda. Do I have a motion to accept the director's orders?
I'll make a motion to approve the director's orders.
Thank you, Lynette. All in favor?
Right?
Aye.
Aye. Approval of minutes.
Do you have any changes?
There were a few typos, but I passed those on to Chris to give to Shauna eventually. Other than that, there was nothing substantive other than a few typos.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Superintendent's report.
Thanks, Tina. A lot of my report is really just more for informative purposes. I know that during the summer months, a lot of our emphasis and focus is really just getting, the buildings up and running, get everything ready to go for the kids. And I know that this has been a very busy summer. It's hard to believe that, the kids will be here in 2 or 3 weeks. We'll be back in school, so the summer has flown by. But like I said, Eric and Sarah and Kelly and the staff are getting the building ready to go, and I think everything's in place. We're still trying to button some things up around staffing more at the SU level, just to better assist. And I know that working with our new director of student supports, Mr. Bill Basic, around that, trying to plug in the holes a little bit. We did have an admin retreat, which I kind of outlined, kind of some of the things that we talked about. One of the things you are going to hear, so one of our main points of emphasis, there are 2 points of emphasis for the administration this year. First is around instructional leadership. Last year, we made this a focus. We did, year 1 through the University of Washington Center for Educational Leadership through their instructional leadership program, and we had all of the GRCSU building admins attended this. It was a good program. We talked a little about this last year, so you're familiar with us. We are looking at continuing that, but we're going to be doing that in-house. We've talked with the admin, felt that we did not need to be away from the buildings as much as we were last year with this, that we could do a lot of things, these same things internally through our admin PLCs. So our goal will be continue to work on just instructional leadership, that our admins will be just continue to provide high quality feedback to staff, just around instruction and best practice and things along those lines. So the second focus is around MTSS, so the multi-tiered system of supports. Like I said, you will hear a lot about this year. I think as we looked at. As we look at through our recovery plan and look at from an academic perspective and some of the deficits, some of the gaps, and I think one of the things we found, there are a lot of positive things going on in our schools, but one of the things we really want to do, and this is obviously prompted by Act 173 as well, but this is good practice that's been in place in other states for over 20 years now, so it's not a relatively new concept. It's just that Vermont has finally adopted this, and it's about time. But you have this multi-tiered system of supports, which basically within each of our schools has all students will be exposed to or have universal or tier 1 or layer 1 what's called best practice. So therefore, the expectations that all students, regardless of who they are, and if they have an IEP or a 504 or general education, our goal really is to make sure that all students have access to high-quality instruction, on the best practice. That's something which we're going to continue to work on. We feel that through working with our teachers, I know Rutland Town has a lot of excellent teachers who are doing this and are continuing to work on this practice. But we still find that that despite all the efforts, that there are still going to be individuals who are going to have some difficulties or have some struggles, and so that's where through a more aligned process, where the staff will work with building administration, will work with some of our academic interventionists. We could then start to refer individuals for what's called a layer 2. I keep on saying tier because I've been done this for many years, but it's now called layers. So layer 2, which is more like intensive support. So let's say if a child is after many repeated attempts, and after like the team meets to discuss like a plan, and the plan doesn't necessarily work. So there, a student may be referred to work like a one-on-one with interventionists, say around reading or math, to kind of help address some of those deficits or gaps, and then they'll continually be reviewed. This is on a regular basis. So you'll see like every 30 days, team the team will meet every other week. But like I said, the plan will be reviewed. They'll look at how the effectiveness of this, and if any changes need to be made. So it'll be a quicker pivot than has happened in the past. And that if there is an individual that who's still struggling through layer 2, then we look at layer 3, which is the most intensive need. In looking at the plan, I know that Eric and Sarah both participated in our 2-day training around this. I do think our students and our staff will benefit from this because it will be a very clear, a much more aligned process. I think parents will be happy to see this because they'll see that when they drop their kids off at school each day, that they can ensure that their kids are receiving the high quality education and all the programs and resources and supports they need to be successful. So, and this is like I said, there's a program that's not, it's for all students. So it's not designed for any specific type of student. It's all students in our student population benefit from MTSS.
So just to clarify that last comment, that's for students that are struggling, and that's also for students that need more enrichment or that type of thing.
So in an MTSS system, a true MTSS system takes a look at individuals who, so let's say if there's a student who's, who is not being, or feel they're not being challenged or pushed, you can look at, obviously, layer 2, layer 2. So layer 2 may look at a little bit differently for that student. So while, may not be working with interventionists, might be looking at other sorts of programming, resources, supports. And what we've found in the past across the SU, we've been, for students who need more of a challenge, or, that we've been we've had little to no resources. I know that one thing we talk about Corey Valley is just like having a student work on like online with online class through virtual high school or VTVLC, and we found that that's not always sufficient, for that. So this is something which we are looking at for an SU-wide approach, that if we find that there's let's say like a group of 5th graders who need a bit of a challenge, we'll say maybe around math, and then how can we really provide programs for a student, maybe a couple of students from Proctor Elementary or West Rutland Town, and create more of an SU-wide focus for those students, as opposed to just having 2 kids got to just go work with somebody over here, just go work on that in the corner while I work with their class. And I say that not to minimize any teacher's efforts, but I think that's what we want to look at, is how we can really meet the needs of our kids across the spectrum.
Great, thank you.
It is, like I said, this is year 1, so there'll be some growing pains, but like I said, in knowing the staff that we have at Rutland Town or other schools, I think, it'll be a smooth shift. Many of these things are already in place at Rutland Town, so. And like I said, the rest is just, it's more informative purposes, so if you have any questions.
Can I just ask, I know you had mentioned, we've spoken a few times about the changing or adding a midterm report.
Yes,
Is that still happening too?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. We spoke with the admin team about that, and I think it's something where it's an easy pivot for us. I spoke with Greg Connors about this. He's just working on the back end. But I said our teachers are updating their grades weekly anyways, and so I think by just providing an opportunity just to send out a report is fine. So the admin team was overwhelmingly in favor of it. There were no issues with that, so.
Will that be listed on the calendar?
Once I can confirm with Greg around dates, we may have a window, just because we don't know from a programming standpoint what to report. So if we put, like, say, October 10th, and it doesn't really go out October 10th, I think, so I think we'll have more information on that.
So like mid-year would be 1 day grades available or something, would be like a week later, potentially, once you check with him.
Well, what we look at is we have 180 days, each 185, so each one of those right around 45-ish days, so we look at, 22 days
Falls.
in, right, so we just, where those progress reports would fall, and it's a pretty easy way to adjust or just to calculate that. I think where we want to make sure of is just that we can deliver that. And I think once, Greg has had opportunity to kind of run a test run, then we can, send out information to families as well as an updated calendar with those dates. We'll go there. So, but I don't want to put the dates on there and have a glitch or a problem, and then have somebody expect it. I also do want people to know that they can access grades at any time too. So it's, that they do have access to those. So, but I think, as you share, Tina, I think, other districts have done this and schools have done this. It just kind of, it's a nice little reminder to some, just, hey, here's what's going on, and here's how your child's doing. If you have any, and it promotes good communication. So,
Thank you. Any other questions for Chris? Okay. Moving on to the principal's report.
All right, I'll do the best I can. I've been out for a few days with a family emergency, so Sarah and I have not talked as much as we usually do. What I have here is the principal's report dated August 1st. It's now August 8th, obviously. We had a great turnout for our summer academy and extended school year programs. The kids were obviously amazing, and the staff that came out and helped was just phenomenal. So great kudos to them. And also, I can shift back to what Lewis said about saving the $49,000 for Kelly services. Our teachers and staff did an awesome job covering that with the hard work they did. I just feel like I have to mention it now. They really did a great job by stepping up to the plate. Our enrollment is at 367. So I had the breakdown here of pre-K at 24, kindergarten 23 students, first grade 36 and 35 respectively, third grade 48 and 38. For fourth grade, fifth grade 35 students, sixth grade 44, seventh grade at 40 students, and eighth grade at 44 students. I don't know if we're still looking to hire paraeducators. I think we hired them. I'm not positive.
We're currently in the process of, hiring staff. Yep.
Okay, sorry, I'm a little
Mr.
bit.
Basic had some interviews today.
A little bit behind. Marie Gilman is still actively looking for the Tapestry program. They have updated their postings. Even as of today, they posted something. I know it's on School Spring and other platforms, and all inquiries are welcome. I talked to Betcha Transit today. We have our bus drivers, and we have a couple subs, so we should be good to go for the year.
Good.
We're still working on routes right now with some construction that we have to deal with. We got a couple plans in action right now, so we're working on it. So that was mostly today. There were some active shooting training August 2nd through August 5th at the building. Building matters. The elevator, says Lewis has a timeline. I'm not up to speed on that right now. I'm sorry. Upstairs, fire safety. Countryside came today. Like I said, I was passing the hallway with Kelly. He said we need 8 detectors, 2 strobes, and 1 voice. Sewer clean out scheduled already for the year. Same with radon testing and fire extinguisher inspection, and life safety testing is scheduled, and storm water continued process. The hot water heater project, I know Kelly was talking to Alliance today. I'm not going to speak for him, but we may begin the year with no hot water. We're working on it. It's something we did last year. What I do know is that the kitchen should be fine because they have heating coils that washes the dishes. But last year we started out with paper dishes in the beginning of the year. So either way, we'll handle it.
Why didn't we have hot water last year?
Was it hot water or just the machine was broken or needed to be fixed? But I do remember starting it with paper plates
I thought
last
there
year.
was one
Oh, it's the
machine.
dishwasher
Yeah.
something was messed up with the dishwasher.
Right.
So it wasn't the water.
Kelly's saying it has a heating coil in it, so we'll be up and running. We'll be fine.
Who's the contractor?
I know he reached out to Alliance. He's working out with Alliance, and he spoke to somebody else. Has Pat
Pat McLaughlin.
McLaughlin, but I don't know the outcome of that.
You want to call Mark McGee. Mark's the one that installed that. You'll be able to help him.
We had some wood chips delivered for the playground to keep the depth. I believe is 9 inches. Annual asbestos training has been scheduled. Royal is scheduled to look at one of the outside doors for replacement. We have some upcoming dates. We have the GRCSU in service on Monday, the 29th. We start school fast. We have our in service on the Tuesday, the 30th, and the first day of school is Wednesday, the 31st. Really exciting this year. We have 7th grade doing a team building with Green Mountain climbing. They will be climbing at the Green Mountain, and also Deer Leap for the rope team ascent, and then canoeing and kayaking on Leiford's Pond. I believe, I'll double check, but I think it's $100 per student, paid by September 3rd. It's a really good price. I did a little bit with them last year. Amazing time. Kids loved it, and they came out of it that much better.
Yeah, I think the 7th and 8th grade both did it last year.
I was with the
Because-
8th grade team,
right.
and it was an amazing experience for a couple hours. I was there. And then we have back to school night on Wednesday, September 14th at 5:30. That was at 6. It did get changed recently. I just saw the email the other day.
Thank you, Eric. All right, on to personnel. We had one resignation. Do I have a motion to accept the resignation of Tim Snell?
So moved.
Thank you, Lynette. All in favor? I already removed the contract recommendations to the executive session.
Right.
And the vacancies are in your packet for you to peruse. Any comments or concerns? Okay. Moving on to executive committee and GRCSU highlights. Did you all have a chance to look at the GRCSU minutes in the packet? And were there any questions at all from the June meeting? I'll just go over a little bit of some of the highlights for me. There's curriculum work going on for vertical and horizontal alignment across the SU, and that's been ongoing over the summer. I'm not really sure if it's finished yet. It looked like they were going to put a good dent into it, but maybe not complete all of it by the start of the school year. They're hoping to have it done maybe, by mid-year, completely. The MTSS work is ongoing. They've just started a group of teachers that are working on that, as Chris had already mentioned. Superintendent evaluations. As board members, we are required to evaluate the superintendent on an annual basis. With COVID, it's been a little tricky. So the GRCSU decided that this year the executive committee would do it and develop the rubric that we're going to use going forward, and then set up the plan for ongoing years. So if any of you have, board members here, have any concerns, comments, or things that you'd like me to bring to that executive meeting, please feel free to email me, and I'd be happy to bring that into the discussion. This strategic plan that we started last year, we will be starting that back up again. Chris and Lisa have been meeting with the group that's helping us and facilitating things, and meetings will be starting in September, I believe.
I can quickly talk about that if you want me to. So in
Sure.
August, at the August GRCSU board meeting, we will be presenting the portrait of graduates to the SU board for approval, and then we'll also be reviewing the strategic plan timeline, which we had a choice. We could either begin the strategic planning process over the course of the summer, or defer and wait till the fall. And in my experience, doing a strategic plan over the summer is not the best time to do, just because of availability of staff, of community members, a lot of people take vacation, so we actually took the summer as like a natural break, and then what will happen is in September, I will be sending out a letter with a portrait to the community members probably in early September, kind of explain the process, very similar to what we'll cover at the SU board meeting. And then also there'll be a survey, community survey, which families will have the opportunity, community members opportunity to provide feedback on strategic planning and some of their goals or some of their thoughts. And then we'll also look to generate a list of volunteers or people who are interested in participating, a variety of community stakeholders. So we board members, parents, staff, people who live in the community, don't have children in school, anyone's invited to participate in this. And our goal would then be to, through the course of 3 to 4 design team meetings, and then there are additional, there's what's called the working team, which are the admins and educators who we take the work of the design team, we then put that into kind of an educational plan to bring back to the team to kind of take a look at. Our goal would be in April or May, and there, or as I say, it just depends on if there's a 4th design team meeting. If there's a 4th design team meeting, then we'd probably push it back to May. If there's only 3, then that would go into April. We bring it back to the boards for review and approval, and then we would then have the plan, year 1 of the plan, ready to go for the 2023-2024 school year.
Thank you. At the most recent executive committee meeting, we talked a little bit about board operating protocols and adding a hybrid piece to it. When we met in March, we kind of went over we got our little packets of essential work of school board members, and we also signed an ethics clause, and basically everything that's on there is on the board operating protocols, but there's nothing mentioning anything about hybrid. So we just wanted, next meeting, we'll probably be talking a little bit about what your thoughts are on adding a hybrid piece, like for instance, when meeting virtually and acting as a board member, have your camera on as much as possible.
Oh,
something like that. And if you, a headset is, and being in a room by yourself is preferred and expected for executive session. Things like that, that we were just thinking about adding on to the already existing operating protocols and just accepting them for our board. Mm-hmm. So we'll discuss that more next meeting. And then Chris had also mentioned looking into March of next year, so this may not worry you at all, Lynette. But the fact that the school board meetings are spread out a lot over the month, and it's hard as an SU to keep everyone on the same page, to pass policies timely, and just work as a cohesive unit. So he's asking us, as we get closer to March, to start thinking about trying to consolidate with the other school districts, trying to maybe all have the meeting in the same week, a different day. Rutland Town would meet one day, Corey Valley would meet another day, but just try to make Chris's life a little easier and make things a little bit more streamlined. So it may not be possible to have everybody in one week, but if there was some type of consolidation, it would make life a lot easier for everyone to work together.
Right. I just want to, I appreciate, but make my life easier. That's not the main driver. That would be a nice perk of this. But I think when we look at, I know Lewis and I have talked about this, as we look at how our meetings are spread out over the course of the month, and what we present to say Wells Springs, the first week, by the time we get to the SU or to Corey Valley, 3 weeks may have passed, and as we look at just legislative pieces, we look at weighting. It's a lot easier. It would be a lot easier for us to sit there, and we knew that if, say, just Rutland Town was on Monday, Corey Valley Tuesday, Ira/Wellspring on Wednesday, and then GRCSU on Thursday. We know that everyone during the course of that week, whether it be a local district or SU, would be receiving the same information at that time, and then would also encourage it, want to provide a lot more flexibility for committee work, because I know that as we sit in, committees, trying to find a free open day is very difficult just because of the way meetings are spread out, and I know that some people are very hesitant to kind of go back to back with meetings, and I understand that. But I think it would be one where, as we just, like you said, just try to consolidate, but also just make sure that from an SU perspective, that we're looking at everyone's receiving the same information kind of in a more timely manner. It's just something, like I said, to consider, and if the board would like to just stay with our current schedule, then, we'll deal with this, but it was just something we just want to do.
Is everybody down to one meeting a month now?
One board meeting? Yes. Yes, everybody has one board meeting.
Yeah, the way the schedule was made up was back when we had 2 a month. And then slowly, each board has gone to 1. So that's why we're all spread out,
Sure.
because we used to meet every 2, which, I think it's a wonderful idea.
So we'll be discussing that as time goes on. And I think that was it for my update. All right, upcoming meetings and future agenda items. So I'll first start with the board retreat. I've spoken with the other chairs of their other boards, and as far as I know, and Chris can correct me if I'm wrong, they're all meeting in their typical location or here with like small dinner, like sandwiches or something mild. And I was curious how you all felt about switching that from meeting at a restaurant to just having dinner brought in, maybe sandwiches or pizzas or something like that, and just make it a little simpler. Just
Fine with me.
I'm indifferent.
So,
So,
I don't care which.
No.
Chris, do you have a preference?
No, we can have Christine send out a survey as we get closer and, work with you, so we can do both if you want, so.
Okay, and then the question is, do you want to do that here, or would you like to do that at the school?
Personally, I got to stand by what I've said previously.
About the air conditioning?
Well, not only the air conditioning, but yeah. But also, until we get our custodian, I don't want to say anything. Until we have confirmed that we actually have custodians that are there to stay, I don't like to go in, even if we pick up, they still have to clean it. So, I just assume meet here.
Whatever the board wishes.
I'm okay with that. Anybody else have any? Okay.
I would say it here.
So, if we could have Christine cancel the Southside Steakhouse reservation, and then, she can send us a couple options we can decide. All right, so that's number 1. Number 2,
That's going to stay at 5, right?
as of this minute,
Okay. Okay. Fine, just let me know.
so we had a request for a formal hearing from a family that has been here before that did not have exactly a formal hearing, but feels the need to still have one. And so my question is, do we want to have it that night since we already have that on the books as far as meeting together? And if we want to have it that night, do we want to have it before we start our retreat or after?
I really don't want to upset my stomach for supper, so can we have it on September 12th?
On the next meeting?
Mm-hmm.
That's fine with me.
It's up to you guys,
Did you say September?
Yeah, I said the September meeting instead of
It will,
board
it
retreat.
probably will take a while.
Yep. So we'll just keep, you will just keep it short the rest of the time, right?
As we've known, not everything is under our control.
I know.
I don't anticipate anything specific being, taking up a lot of time next month. Chris, is it
Budget's about it.
besides budget? And we're going to talk about that during our board retreat a little bit, just to kind of get a jump start on it. Chris, is there anything that you know of for September that might take a long time?
What's better for you, which date?
I personally think a retreat should stay focused on just goals and board work. I think that this would muddy the waters. I think that a formal hearing should take place either separately or during a board meeting. So,
the choice would be to find another date or do it September 12th. Tim?
I'm good with the 12th.
Beth?
Well, yeah.
Okay, so we're all in agreement. We'll do it September 12th after our regularly scheduled meeting. And we'll figure out maybe a time to suggest to the family to show up.
Yeah, it's up
Closer
to
to
you. You'll
that.
know what is on the agenda by then.
Exactly. So I'll be in touch with them.
Okay.
And then the next item is the September 12th meeting. I think we were anticipating it being at the library because we're back in school and we're trying to get back into the school. We may still have that custodian shortage. It looked like we may not have it
Right.
complete. So,
Gonna have to wait till they go through the process of learning and,
yeah, but
and I think because we have the hearing also, it should be here. That way there's fewer ears in executive session.
okay, I'm okay with that. And then we'll make sure, Chris, can we make sure for the September meeting that we have an update from Greg that everything is set to have it at the library so that we can move there in October? So that moves us on to good and welfare. Does anyone have anything to share?
It was nice to see the sign in the front of the school cleaned up, looking nice.
It's also nice to have the custodial advertisement off of it today too.
Oh, yay!
That's good.
Started to get some welcome letters in the mail from teachers and stuff, so that was
Oh, good.
cool. School supply list and backpack shopping and things like that.
Billy mentioned he couldn't join us tonight, but he mentioned that he's grateful and thankful for the active shooter training, and even though it's not, wonderful reason why we have to have it, he's grateful that we were able to attend it and, our teachers participated.
I'm sure you've already become aware that the chief has lost his small flashlight.
I went for a walk today. I did not find it.
He looked at, he has had it for a little over a week. It's over $200 flashlight. It's a little tiny thing, and he was just, oh my God, I went home at 1 because I couldn't stand listening to him anymore. But, yeah, so if you keep your eye out,
Believe me, I have. I am.
Oh,
I just want to echo also what Erica said about the summer, the teachers that helped out with the summer programming at the school. And thank you very much for doing that.
I know a lot of people did stuff behind the scenes too, so kudos to them for stepping up when they really didn't need to. And I know a lot of folks did step in, stepped out, came back in, came back out, just to help the kiddos.
Also want to thank the teachers that are using some of their summer time to work on the MTSS and the curriculum work. It's a lot of nitty-gritty details and takes a lot of time, so I'm thankful that they're willing to use some of their summer vacation for that. All right, so it is time to move, I'd like to take a 10-minute recess until 7:40 to start an executive session to discuss confidential attorney-client communications, followed by the contract recommendations. Or actually reverse that order. So, because Lewis, I think we need you to stay for the the contract recommendations. I don't know if you were planning to stay for the other one. Okay, so you're gonna be here the whole time anyway, so it doesn't matter. So whatever's better for the, Mr. Ellis. All right, thank you.